All right, we're back for episode 77. Happy long weekend. Jason, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you doing, John?
Well, I'm doing better now. I was actually I don't
Okay.
know if this happened before when we last recorded. My furnace went out for about 10
Oh,
days.
oh no, you
And
didn't say.
yeah, I was in the process of getting a new one because my old one was really old, so I'd done all the research and everything. And it
Hmm.
was supposed to be scheduled, to install like sometime next week, and then it went out last Monday.
Oh,
Yeah, so,
wow.
like and it so it was really, really cold. Wasn't terribly cold, but, like, the last couple days were, like, below freezing, so we had all our
That.
fireplaces
Oh,
going, some space heaters, and
okay. They were
but
chilly. They're chillier for you than than for I am because it hasn't been. I feel like that cold. We're not that far apart.
yeah. Well, last Monday and Tuesday, so, like, a week out, it got
Okay.
it got down below freezing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So and then
Hmm.
Wednesday, when it was installed, it was, like, 28 degrees. Now, we spent some time away. Luckily, we have
Hmm.
another place that has heat, so we went there for the last weekend. But during the week we were and then I was sick the whole time too. It was like
Oh
kinda hand in
no.
hand. So I was sick and cold but now I'm warm and not so cold.
Not
I mean,
and
not so
not
sick.
sick. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Good.
And what
I
about you?
Seattle, the greater Seattle area has the microest of microclimates, I swear.
Mm.
Because it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I think it was when you were talking about this, is it was
Yeah.
we did have maybe some wintry mix, rain and snow-ish in here,
Right.
but it's also like, I don't know, like a mile, 2 miles away, it's hailing or
Right.
something else is
Yeah,
happening,
yeah.
and it's like I wouldn't hearing about that and going, "Wait, in the same area as this weather or what?"
And it depends if you're on a hill or not too. Like, I'm on a
Yeah,
hill,
exactly.
so
Okay,
that
yeah.
that changes it a little
That
bit.
slight
When
elevation gives you
Yes.
all the colder weather.
Yes. Yes. But it's all good now. It's all good.
I'm hoping to actually, by the time this is out, it might already exist. But I'm hoping to release my first Pathfinder Infinite product tomorrow, maybe
Oh,
Tuesday. Yeah.
nice. What is it a secret or
It's a sort of a secret. I've also just been telling everybody about it too, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not really that much of a secret in the community. But well, that's in the freelancer community. But
yeah.
hopefully it'll be a fun surprise for
Okay, I'll go
it is
look at those
it is
forums then. Yeah.
fair enough.
I saw you
It
talking
is,
about something and you were helping
yeah.
somebody and I was
I'm
like,
help was doing some helping with people,
yeah.
and but I've created something that's mostly a joke, because that's how I do things, but hopefully it's also fun. Maybe it is a Pathfinder 2. We'll just say it's a Pathfinder 2 ancestry related info piece.
Oh, speaking of Pathfinder 2, I just got
Mm.
back and this was in my mailbox today.
Oh, you got your copy too? Ugh.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
are getting their copies, and I'm wondering when I'm gonna get my contributor copy
Well, the
because
contributors come like really late, I
yeah, they
guess.
do. I
I don't
mean,
know.
it makes sense to send it to the paying customers for
Yeah.
video.
And I know you had worked on this. This one, yeah, yeah.
Is that Drift Hackers too?
The Drift Hackers too. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Definitely.
because
I'm
I
excited
heard
to
you
see.
say some
I hadn't seen any of I did not see any of the Drift Hackers books in layout.
Mhm.
So I hope they look good.
It looks good, it looks good. Now it's interesting, so I'm looking at the back where it
Mhm.
has the little words here, and
Sure,
I've
yeah.
only looked at this one. This one says TikTok. So,
It's a good
that
one.
makes
I like it.
sense because it's Clockwork,
Clockwork, yeah.
Demons. Now I gotta go back and look at the other ones to see if they say if there's any, theme to them.
If there are, I had nothing to do with it because
Okay.
again, that stuff is generally written after it's been laid out.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's up to
Okay.
someone. So, I'm pretty sure I wanna say thank you, Thurston Hillman, for stepping up and helping out there, because he pinged me a couple of times like, "Who wrote this stuff again?" I'm like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought I left all that on a information, but maybe no one told you where it was, but I'll
So he had to
A, B, and
finish it
C."
all up then.
Basically, I mean, hopefully it wasn't too bad, like too over or too under copy fit wise.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had just sort of turned 51 over to edit, like a week before. That's 50, which is a big
50.
deal. So, let me talk about that real quick. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Starfinder Adventure Paths got to 50, like,
Yeah.
50th volume, which is, not nothing. I know there's a big more big to do when Pathfinder got to 100,
Right.
which may or may not happen for Starfinder APs, who knows? But so I'm
They're
sort
gonna
of
change them
hoping.
now. Are they still gonna number them the same way? Because it's
That's a
all
good
gonna
point.
be
They may
hardcovers.
Yeah, yeah, they may not be numbered anymore. So I think 50 is the big milestone. I was happy to, preside over that. Quinn Murphy gave
Yeah,
a really fun adventure there. I tasked him with sort of like, do clockwork stuff, but in space.
yeah.
And then, we got a lot of fun clockwork monsters in the back that are weird. I think that was Al, maybe? Or actually pronounced their last name.
Oh, I think
Um,
it's Saib, yeah.
Type, that makes sense. Yeah, those were fun, and hopefully the art came out good because I don't know if I've seen any of the art of any of it either, so Ooh,
Okay. Well,
yeah,
hopefully soon you'll get yours.
hopefully soon. I'm not gonna actually, well, here's the thing, it's like, I'm not gonna see any Drift Hackers books. I technically I don't get contributor copies of stuff that I worked on
Right, right.
while I
Okay,
was there, so I'm
if
in
you
the
want,
unfortunate.
I can bring them by your house and you can look.
Oh, that'd be great. Do you have the
Okay.
P do you get are you getting the PDFs?
Yeah, I get the PDFs too.
I'll just look at a copy of your PDF and delete it from my
Not
hard drive.
supposed to do that. We're not supposed
Oh,
to do
just
that.
looking at it, I'm not gonna use it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, the last couple episodes, we kind of shifted gears a little bit. Now we're going to get back to something we said we were going to
Mhm.
talk about, and it was planets and like cool planets or making planets or what makes planets
Yeah.
cool. And
What
I
makes
think
them
that's what
cool?
you were going to talk about. And then I just kind of, I didn't make any planets like this. And so thought, okay, I'll come up with five of the planets I like and we can
Sure.
intersperse those.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
How do we wanna start? I
You
guess is the
talk
question.
about cool planets. What makes cool
Okay.
planets? What you like about making them?
What do I like about those? So mainly there's sort of the Codex of Worlds entries in the, speaking of APs, right? The Codex of Worlds entries in the back were always kind of intended to be a little extra something.
Hmm.
Sometimes they might relate to the adventure, but for the most part, it's just like, hey, GMs, here's a page of some interesting planet or moon or whatever that you can drop into your game if you want, or just spawn, some other thoughts and whatever. And so it was just sort of generally um thought of a way to just sort of throw some more lore, because at the time there wasn't going to be a whole lot of, there hasn't been for a long time, big books like the Lost Omens guides to areas. We occasionally we had Pack Worlds, we had Near Space, but we're not going to just be putting out constant 64-page books that are just about an area, right? Off covers. So this was just a way to help expand the lore of Starfinder. And so it's just a lot of everything is often brand new. Like, not many things are mentioned elsewhere in other books,
Hmm.
because the galaxy is infinite and there's just so much to do. So what do I like making cool planets? I like to have them kind of be tied a little thematically ish toward to if the adventure, if it's possible. Otherwise, it's just sort of we get sort of ask people most of the time. There and then in the rare cases where we want to tie something in, like the second volume of Escape from the Prison, Against the Aeon Throne, was sort of the back thing was Outpost Z. Here's a little more information about Outpost Z because we
Hmm.
don't have room for an entire article about it. Let's just put. For all of Attack of the Swarm, I decided to say, like, well, here's, we're talking about one or two planets in that system. Let's talk about the other five or six planets. And so that I kind of planned those out ahead of time and named them, and it was just like, hey, this is what I want you to write about. It looks like this, it's this ish, kind of stuff, and then just so basically, what makes a good Codex of Worlds, I think, is plot hooks.
Hmm.
Interesting, something's going on there that you can have an adventure.
So I want to ask you something related to
Hmm.
this because one of the planets that I like is uh, Waydana 4, also known as New Harmony,
Hmm.
which is the planet that you're on for Horizons of the Vast, the AP book.
Yes.
Now,
Right.
was that something that was then created just for this AP?
That definitely was. I think, yeah, and wait, yeah, the whole Horizon of the Vast Waydana system is
Right.
all the Codex of Worlds of the back of that 6 volumes are
Right.
different areas in Waydana system. Yeah, that was just sort of just had to create someplace new because I wanted to also mess it up. The same with, like, Attack of the Swarm. I wanted to create a new world so I could mess it up,
Yeah. Okay if it
and
explodes, it's fine, yeah.
it's fine. And with the way down system, it had to kind of be a blank slate,
Right.
essentially. I mean, it really isn't. Not too many spoilers there, but enough of a blank slate that people could build up on. It was new, and we went around. I think we went around a couple times about what the system was going to be named,
Hmm,
and we eventually hit on let's name it after a god
right.
of creation. That's something that us humans we do all the time, and especially planets of our solar system after Roman gods.
Cool. Okay, and, when you're creating planets like this, I remember, when I interviewed Joe Passini, he was really, really
Mhm.
excited. We were still in, prior to the pandemic, so we're in the office
Sure.
there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he had the Codex of Worlds with him, and he brought it in to show me all the new ways you could make new planets, and super
The
excited
deck
about
of
that.
many worlds
The Deck of
thing,
Many
right?
Worlds, yeah, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that.
No, but
Yeah,
that was just a. I mean, a planet making machine that he created, using a deck of cards that probably close to an infinite number of possibilities. Uh, Great product, and if I think it's gotten a second printing, which is very rare for a deck.
oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Now is that something you ever use? "Hey, we need a new planet here, let's go ahead and pull some cards out and line them up,"
So
and
sometimes I think it wasn't done. I don't think we did it too frequently because it was always just sort of like laser focus. But like,
yeah,
I imagine it was either like a blank slate, like, "Hey, uh, author, I just need a planet that's vaguely related to XYZ," right? Like all of the planets in the back Dreams,
mhm,
Owen Casey Stevens wrote, "Get well soon, please." And, he was like, "Oh," and they're all sort of horror linked, so they're a little
right, right,
thematically
right.
horror based, and there are different types of horror, and, hey, I just went like, "Yeah, go wild, go write me out," 'cause there are people who you just sort of can generally trust to be like, "Write me 3 whatevers," and they'll do it, and then there's some people there's some times when I just need a lava planet here because, you know, fire-based adventure.
Mhm, mhm, cool. So, when we look at the existing planet systems we have now, so we have, I mean, the starting one, so the basic pack worlds, right? You have
Yeah.
the pack worlds, and then you have near space, which includes um, other areas, and Viscarium's
Mhm.
in near space as well, right?
Yep.
What other systems are in near space besides the Viscarium?
There's the Marixa Republic, there's
Oh
the
yeah, Rexel
Gideon
Republic.
Authority.
Gideon.
Gideon, now I'm realizing that's just a name, isn't it? Gideon.
Yeah. Now, is that
Okay.
so? Is the Marixa Republic and the Gideon Authority? Is that something that was
Gideron. Sorry,
Gideron?
it's Gideron, that's why it's not an actual name, but
Gideron, yeah.
yeah,
Now, those came out in through Society Play. That's where I
that's
was.
right.
Okay. Now, were those developed specifically for Society, or had they been developed somewhere else and then they were brought in?
No, that was, I think, again, Thirsty's sort of creation. He was,
Mhm,
again, looking for some more defined systems that he could go back to over and over again, and we didn't
mhm.
really have a ton of them, honestly. There were maybe a couple of them that are introduced in the core rulebook that are actually in Fast, like
Right.
our Tabari cluster, and it's the one that is the one where the relics are from Shadari
Oh,
Confederacy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, those were sort of too far out, and so he wanted some stuff that was in, near space, and I think he probably just really just wanted to do something with hobgoblins.
Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah. Well, cool.
So
Well,
those were expanded upon in near space, and then I
right.
think we got added a couple the Bandite Collective
Mhm.
newly that particular.
Now, when you're building a planet, what's your process that you think about? Do you think about kind of what the social area is like? Do you think what the geography is like? Do you think about what the flora and fauna are like? Or I mean, how do you get started with something like
I go for the hook first. Find what the hook
that?
is. And sort of talking about specific things, we could talk about the one of the very first things that I wrote for Starfinder as a freelancer is a Codex of Worlds in the back of AP Volume 2. And essentially, the hook there is that like uh, this planet was doing a bunch of science, and then they accidentally uh, pushed their whole planet into a black hole. So they, as they were then they evacuated and then set up on a moon base, which didn't get I think their old moon, which somehow didn't get pushed into the hole, sort of nearby, maybe orbiting the whole thing. They're in the process of trying to figure out how to get their home world back. So that was sort of the hook. I was like, I want to do something with black holes and something fun, like that, and then work from there. And then whatever the hook is for that, you sort of can easily figure out what the society is like, what the people are like, if there are any flora or fauna to talk about, what that might be like. You sort of branch out from there. One of the things that was always written on my whiteboard, skip height, was the gravitational constant
Hmm, mhm,
equation, so that we could keep the mass, diameter,
right.
gravity of a planet within reason, within sort of scientific reason. Barring, of course, magic can happen. I think there were a couple. I don't know. There's a couple people were pretty sticklers about that, and I know that some of our readers were also sticklers about when a planet is twice as big but has half the radius, that the gravity is going to be more or less. I can't remember which. Um. So I would always just sort of look at that and then do a quick calculation and be like, okay, when I was developing a plan,
Right.
oh, this is fine, or I need to sort of like, no, no, that's really wildly off. Is there a reason for it? So that could be one place to sort of start, thinking about like, well, do you want it to be a normal gravity planet? Then you have to figure out what the size and the ratios of this between mass and diameter are. Otherwise, it's just sort of like whatever's the most interesting thing about it needs to, especially in a Codex of Worlds, which is only like 500 words. What's the most interesting thing? Got to write about that first. If we're talking about something like in Dear Space, which we get like a two, then you get to play around more. Then you could be like, "Oh, this is definitely a jungly planet," and we talk about the humidity and all that stuff. But then
Mhm.
find out something else that is a hook about it that turns it on its head, or just is something different and interesting.
So, do you have any favorites of the planets that you've made or developed or even
Yeah, I mean, one I brought in was sort of grabbed was second, the first one I worked on,
yeah.
Ratharin. That took a long time coming up with a name, like sort of playing with syllables and just trying to come up with a name that sounded plausible. The one of the toughest things always is naming, of course.
Mhm.
And often I will go with a word and kind of try to twist it into another word, or a collection of syllables, or I just sort of start saying nonsense syllables until it sounds plausible enough. Yeah. So there's that one. I like that one.
So, I kind of a unrelated question is who developed
Mhm.
a viscarium in the planets?
That was probably trying to figure who's around. It was most likely John and Joe at that, with some probably some help. I know that Rob McCreary was very um insistent that sort of he like n- I mean they're not that one. Actually, he was more insistent about the Atlantean Empire than but
Right.
he
Right.
just I think he basically wrote this sort of introduction to the book about the Vescarium in general because he had an idea of what that was as a whole.
Mhm.
And then all the specific other little bits were other people.
I really like so looking at the things I like the most, I actually like a non-planet, but I'm counting it as a planet. I like Conqueror's Forge.
Conqueror's
The
Forge is fun,
idea
yeah.
of that massive space station, almost like kind of the analogous to like Absalon Station on the other side in the Pack Worlds. But
Indeed,
here
yeah.
we have this Conqueror's Forge, which first of all is a really cool name, but also it's our where they're making like weapons and designing
Mhm.
starships and doing stuff for conquering. So
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool. and I one of the adventure hooks I wrote for, uh, the Drift Crisis, hardcover actually, ties into Conqueror's Force,
Yeah.
and that's where I got to
Oh,
learn a little bit more about it. One of the adventure hooks that we have in there,
right. Yeah, yeah.
so
I mean, that was, I believe, pretty intentional that we would have the Vescarium. Before that book was handed out to writers, we had to figure out what was in the Vescarium, and I think there's a little bit in the core rulebook just sort of hinting at some stuff of
right.
what's going on there, but then we had to really sort of flesh it out and be like, "Well, what's Viscorium Prime? What's Viscorium 2? Where do the Skittermanders come?"
Mhm,
Um, and there was sort of a thought of like, Pack World has Absalom Station and the Adari.
right.
This, the Vescarium should have something rich and a war place, war forge basically.
Mhm.
Um, Made a lot of sense.
Right. Now, some of the Viscarium planets were talked about through Society Play early on too.
Mhm.
You
Do
mentioned
that
the
too, yeah.
Skittermanders, right? So, how they were, introduced into Society Play, and the fact that they were, conquered, but they came in to help the conquerors, right? So
They were just like, "Oh, what are you doing? You're conquering? That's great. Well, I'm just gonna keep doing this. So, what do you need a hand with that?
yeah,
No, I don't need your hand. I'm conquering you. Oh, sure, sure. We're conquered. We're
yeah,
good. That was yeah. The whole
yeah.
the
So
whole
I
concept.
I I think, and that's Vest 3, right?
Yeah, that's Vesk 3.
Yeah. So
It's Vermilion Seas.
yes. So, and I have another question for you. And again, this
Mhm.
is one of the planets I like, and this one's in. I think it's in near space as well. Fulscar, planet of giants.
Planet of Giants. That's a fun
Why?
one. Yeah.
Why is there one planet with all the giants?
Why not? I mean, it's fun thematic. It doesn't have to be, you know, the only place where giants come from, but up to that point, there hadn't been a lot of giants in Starfinder. So we
Right.
decided, what if they had their own world, and that would be, a planet of giants. Um, Again, it's just a fun concept to be like, yeah, this is where everyone big lives.
Yeah. I mean, it does show up in. So again, in Galactic Magic, I got to write an artifact, and it's
Mm,
Titarian's anvil, which was again, it's kind of a thing for making big weapons and stuff. For
yeah,
giant weapons that got transported to Volscar. But also it's in Society Play. So giants do actually show up in 4, I think, uh, of of Society, where we first see them and everything's like humongous and stuff. So yeah, but I think it's interesting because in when you look at, like, when I play D&D, giants were always like one of those big things that you're always, the big bads to
yeah,
attack that were really tough to defeat. And in Starfinder, up until recently, oh, we have large creatures, but we don't have, you know, huge and bigger,
yeah.
know. So
It's part of that whole continuation from the Pathfinder Larian, having giants on them, and wouldn't they also probably be elsewhere in other planets or just go
yeah,
to space themselves, right? I mean, they have you talk about flying castles and stuff. Storm.
right.
They'd probably have spaceships pretty quickly if they can do that kind of magic. Want magic spaceships? Head off, get
Mhm.
on out of here to a world that is more your size.
Right, they probably don't wanna go any place where all the normal sized people are because it's not very
No,
comfortable.
no, it
So
wouldn't
they
be.
yeah, yeah.
And
They're
then they
not
might be,
conquering, like, they're not conquering every place to make everything huge, so it's like,
yeah, not
we'll
necessarily.
all just go to our it's like where all the tall basketball players, here's the place they all like to shop, and all the giants, here's where
Sure,
they
yeah.
all like to hang out?
You got to go to your spacesuits big and tall uh,
Yes.
warehouse. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, that'd be funny, making armor for a cloud giant, right? So
yeah. Takes a week.
yeah, yeah, hard to resize that. Um, okay, I got you. I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit. So one of my favorite
Sure.
things about the pack worlds
Mhm.
is not currently a planet, but the diaspora.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
big asteroid belt and big asteroids and stuff. I presume that was a planet at some point, but there's no
It
lore
was two
behind.
planets. What do you mean
it
there's no
is.
lore
So
behind it? There's
so
plenty of
that's the
lore
one
behind it.
with the crash that created it. I
Yes. Yeah,
didn't
yeah, yeah.
remember if it was related to that. So, like,
It
Eox is, like, kind of the one of the
mhm.
2, and the other one's destroyed then, right? Is that
No, it's actually Eox has destroyed 2 other planets, if I recall
Oh,
correctly,
okay.
in the
Oh, it's been a while
process,
since I read that.
and made the diaspora. Now I have to al
Yeah.
'cause it's I know that it's 2 I'm pretty sure there's 2 planets. And one of them is, like, yes, the
Yeah.
twin planets, Damiar and Iovo,
Okay.
were
Okay.
destroyed. I mean, thing is, I think, in the Distant Worlds Pathfinder campaign said anything, it was like an unknown catastrophe.
Yeah.
And when Starfinder came around, we just said, "Well, no, it was Eox." We
Okay.
decided it was Eox,
Yeah. Okay.
training a huge laser beam on them or something like that,
I
and
I I vaguely remember something like that.
yeah.
But anyway, so I
Mhm,
like those 2 planets that now became this big asteroid belt. Um, the interesting thing, when so that's the pirates hang out, the space pirates hang
mhm.
out on Broken Rock and everything. But is piracy that much of a problem with the drift?
That's the thing. One of those things that doesn't quite jive. Now you've gotta, like, you can't drift everywhere, right? You can't, like,
Yeah.
you can warp in Star Trek. You come to a semi-random spot and come out of, and then you've gotta travel through normal thruster. So that can be a place where piracy might happen,
Mhm.
right? And so it was enough. We gotta have, you kinda gotta have
Yeah.
space pirates, so you kinda wave your
Right.
hands a little bit about how it happened. But
Right.
there's a lot of non-drift travel. People may not trust the drift or just
Right, all
going
within
from
system, right? So it's
within
within the
system.
Pack World
Exactly.
system.
Yeah.
That's where it's gonna be. It just seems like everything's relatively close in system then, that if piracy were such a big deal, that the stewards would be all over that. But
Yeah. I mean, it takes the amount of time. It's the same reason that highway banditry exists in a fantasy set.
yeah,
Places are
far enough
there's
though.
no for you to get from one place to another. There's still time. You still have to take a
Yeah.
couple days, and there's always wild spaces that a town guard or country's militia can't patrol 100%. And the stewards, can't be everywhere at once. So that's where the piracies come in. It's weird because it's like everyone knows the sky captains. Sky captains? That's a movie. The the
Skyfire
space
Legion,
pirates.
right?
No, not the Skyfire Legion. What is the name of the pirate group in Starfinder?
Oh,
They have a name. The Free Captains.
free
That's what they
captains,
are.
yeah.
I got my Skyfire Legion and
Yeah,
my Free
free captains
Captains
don't
mixed
really
up.
sound like as pirates. It sounds more like,
Well, yes.
yeah.
It's branding is what it
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
They're free to do it. That was the whole. Yeah, you go. Talk about the sort of shackles too. There, and it's just like free to do whatever we want. And what we do is piracy. You know. I think it's weirder that there is a nation state of island countries that is pirate themed altogether. Like just don't go there. It
Right,
seems like if you go
right.
there, you're gonna get raided by pirates. It's guys the same. If you go to the diaspora, you're probably gonna get attacked by space pirates. So maybe just don't go there. Um, that everyone knows that their headquarters is on Broken Rock, right? It's like a known thing. So it seems like the stewards, if they were good at their job, would be 100% focused on finding that thing and taking it out. But, yes, politics. They have a couple big guns on that,
Yeah,
asteroid,
yeah, yeah.
so it makes it tough. I'm sure the stewards know exactly where Broken Rock is, they just don't have the back on it. The, one speaking of a bunch of broken rocks, another planet that I, brought up early on that I wanna kind of also, bring up as, I guess, a fate. It's in the core rule book, but there's a fun history behind it. Um, it's the, area known as Ori, and is a planet that's been destroyed, but all of the chunks of it have not sort of floated off in space because they're floating around this gravitational anomaly, which is what destroyed it in the first place. So they were a bunch of super scientists who messed around with gravity and blew up their planet, and then that was like probably millennia ago, and now everyone's sort of living on these uh, rocks that sort of gently kind of float around each other. and have reverted to an almost, you know, modern-ish or medieval-ish sort of time, and then there's groups of people on there sort of um, take travelers from one, like, big chunk to the other, have to, like, temporarily bridge these things together by leaping across with some rope and stuff, and then tying it off. That whole idea is actually based around a short campaign that I played 15 years ago now. But it was sort of set in a we sat down and created a setting for this campaign as a group and decided, "Oh, we like these floating rocks, and we like the idea that maybe you're jumping between them, and that's what the adventures are going to be about, and going from one place to another, and that's how you have to travel. It's really dangerous, but you can bridge it. But, some close enough that you can do that." And I took that and turned that into a science fiction thing. Fun.
It's also in, the Dead Sun AP, same kinda thing. And you go
Mm.
visit the Kishali?
It's a yeah, I mean, there's a little bit yes, there's a part of Istamak,
Yeah,
the city, which is broken
yeah,
up and has some floating
yeah, yeah.
chunks. Yeah, there's some themes, I guess you could say, in my writing
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Um, but, the whole thing is that because, and the name of Ori is comes from the word orrery, which is a word I love, to use as much as possible, which is, of course, if you remember the Dark Crystal has all the planets and stuff spinning,
Mhm.
and I just love that. I just anytime I could put that in a thing, I totally would,
Isn't
because
that an
it's
Easter
great.
egg? I'm told we're not supposed to do those things.
It's not really that much of an Easter egg. It's not a direct reference to the Dark
Yeah,
Crystal. An
yeah, yeah,
orrery
yeah,
is a
no, I
thing
know.
that exists, and this is
Yes.
just a
Yeah,
word that
yeah,
kinda sounds like it because it's about things sort of
yeah.
spiraling around a central it's okay. I think it's fine.
So, any other cool things you wanna talk about with planets?
I talked about on my Wiki Horror Planet, the idea of the 2 systems that we create
Yeah.
best, those are together. What about you? Sure, you've got some more that you wanted to talk.
Oh, well, I actually mentioned 4 of them. The only one I haven't mentioned is Arnacell. Do you know what Arnacell is?
That sounds familiar. Tell me
Uh,
more.
Arnacell is from the 1st season of Starfinder Society, and I
Oh,
think Kate Baker must have invented it. It's
that okay,
the,
that's why it sounds familiar.
yeah, so it's a, mostly aquatic world,
Mhm.
and that's where she introduced the Morlama, so the huge walrus or the
Yeah,
large
I love 'em.
walrus creatures that swim everywhere in the trenches, Arneson. So she's had a couple of, I think 2 society adventures that taken place there with them. And so that's another I'm just when we were talking about this, I'm trying to think, I gotta think of the 5 planets I think are pretty cool, and so I looked at, New Harmony or, Wedana 4, Conqueror's Forge, Folscar, Arnacell, and, Diaspora. So those are the main ones that I came up
Yeah,
with that I like.
good, good. Yeah, I love a good underwater world. It's just like, um, you can just do I mean, it's just sort of like it's normal, but it's underwater, I think is hilarious always, and it's just like, people, they go about their buildings, but all their buildings are underwater. Like, there's one, episode of, Jack Horner that takes place underwater, or like Dr. Zoidberg's planet, although there's sort of a more of a beach,
Mhm.
world than a full underwater. Um, good stuff.
It
I think I
complicates things,
oh
movement
sure,
and
yeah.
combat and everything.
If you're talking about pure mechanics, it makes things complicated, which is
Yeah.
why we don't have a million of them. But from a narrative point of view, it's just sort of
Yeah.
fun to. I guess sort of like speaking of that, I guess I talk a little bit briefly about the other one, the planet. My 2 society adventures running on them. Now the name of the planet I cannot remember. Um, but
Oh, yes, that's one that you're exploring and you come across. Uh,
yeah,
you gonna look it up?
I'm looking it up right now. Uh, do here it is. My gosh, no, it doesn't say the name. Oh no, this one doesn't work.
This one doesn't
Uh,
work?
uh, that link didn't give me the name of the planet.
Oh. Were you looking up, the race, the species there, Chobani?
I should just look up the species, the Jabrani. I should look them up. I just looked up the name of the adventure.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't help because it is uh, Elite Trio.
Elite Trio. Oh, yes, that's a good because I really like that name. I don't
Yeah.
know why I didn't remember it. I really like that name. That also is one of those things where coming up with the name was a lot of fun. Taking a sort of deep dive into beetle taxonomy
Mhm.
and finding a word that kinda sounded like it could be a planet and then, like, couple this around a little. Again, I am constantly doing that. If you can figure out where my starting point is, you might be able to, like, if from the end point, good luck to you, but, like, you'll be able to I think you'll be able to tell.
It's interesting you mentioned that. When I interviewed Tim Nightingale, he's a
Mhm.
bug guy, entomologist, water bug guy in
Mm.
particular, and so how he created, some of the monsters he wrote up for Pathfinder was taking, real bugs and blowing up really big, and then the art was actually based on, like, using blown up, with a microscope images
Oh,
of
yeah.
some of their mandibles and stuff. He submitted some of that for the sample art, and, so I thought that was kind of a
That is one thing that I did, um, when we were trying to create the sieve, what they look like.
mhm. Oh,
Took a whole bunch of stuff, and one of the things that it took was, real close up microscope view kind of looks so cool and weird. I wish I could remember exactly the name of that insect.
yeah, me too.
Look it up
We're
again.
in the last book of
Mm.
Devastation Arc. We just hit level 20 actually in our actual book.
Ooh,
And,
nice.
yeah, the Civ, we get them described quite a bit. I don't wanna make any spoilers why they're described quite a bit in there, but, I still I don't have a good image of them myself.
Should somehow find and dig up my
Yeah.
just
Well,
it's ever tell if they're so weird.
it's in the book too? Because I haven't
There's
looked at the AP because I'm playing
yeah,
in it.
there's a
Okay.
couple images of Civ in the book as well, but
Okay, I should look at that then,
the
just so
the
I know.
the concept art though is just so like the epitome. It's like
Right.
platonic solid of platonic ideal of what I wanted them to, and then draw them. It gets a little lost in translation, but I mean, it's still good and just still look weird because it was difficult. Well, again, you're giving someone like, well, this is, I mean, not spoil it too much. It is sort of like a bunch of animals mushed together and all.
Right.
Difficult to tell that because of the way we did it, but having someone else draw something so weird is. I just wanted to be weird and alien as much as possible.
Yes. Well, that's
That
definitely
was a
you.
lot.
You definitely like the weird and alien, which is one of the cool things about Starfinder.
Yes, I like a weird alien. I don't know. Give me something. I mean, I like a weird alien so you can contrast it with your normal human, soldier.
So, what do you wanna talk about next time? We haven't really,
There's no real. I was sort of thinking a little bit this week, and we were talking a little bit about like there's some errata that got dropped last week. It's not really super. It's sort of fun that there's now like Dustin gone into some of the AP volumes, more recent AP volumes, and fixed some things. And then sort of maybe a little talking a little bit about how a little bit of a tweet Starfinder comics. I don't
oh,
know if you saw
yeah,
that.
I saw that.
So I don't know
I
what's going on
I
with that.
Do you know any more that you can say?
I don't know any more than I can say. It was talked about a lot when I
Yeah.
was there. I
Okay.
think they were sketching something out, but
Why don't
I
we
wasn't part.
I think that'll be fun. Why don't we spitball something like Starfinder comics, what we would like to see in them, what we think they should, like a
Mhm.
Starfinder graphic novel kinda thing or something. I'm a
Sure,
big
I would,
comic
yeah.
fan, so I think that would be fun to see that kinda crossover.
Did you read the ones that a little short story that was in the back of Spiral of Bones part, start with Starfinder stuff? That was, like, the first Starfinder brief comics.
Of what was in the back of?
I think it was in the back of Spiral of Bones. You have Spiral of Bones, there's some Starfinder
I d
comic that so there's a little bit of Starfinder comic that exists.
Okay.
It's our
Spiral Bone.
icons. They meet a Skittermander, of course, they do this other
Yeah.
some other stuff and
No, no.
oh, yeah.
I'll have to check that out. Well, that sounds like a good starting point.
Sure, exactly. And see some of I think Eric Mona wrote them, and you can see how he feels about Skittermanders in that.
Alright. Well, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm John.
And I'm Jason, and this has been Digital Divination.